Hello, and welcome back to my final episode of Adventures with Boilers. So, thanks for all the feedback I've had. Loads of really good advice and questions, and tips and tricks. This is the array that I had at the end of the last video, basically. So it's a whole load of boilers with steam engines powered by solid fuel. And there were some issues with this. There's just a lot of steam going on, which doesn't do the performance any good. I flipped this over to light oil, which is more efficient. It takes half the amount of fluid to produce the same amount of solid fuel. There were some queries on the forums about these splitters with having dead material on the end. It's only a couple of blocks, it doesn't really matter. But you can get rid of it by, if we set this to priority out to the right, there we are. So this is going to tend to go straight through, but we're never going to accumulate on the left. I'm not sure how that works for UPS, but anyway, it gets rid of your dead stuff. However, let's scoot over here for a minute. So this is the repeated unit from that design. So it's got your 8 solid fuel makers to one side and 8 below. I then modified it with this setup here. So you'd run in a belt of coal. A red belt's fine. You split off a yellow of coal to feed these boilers. In the event that there's no solid fuel, this will supply coal to your boilers, and hopefully everything will carry on going. In the event where you have solid fuel coming through, the coal backfills any gaps, but by the time the solid fuel is backed up, it's just running solid fuel. And because the solid fuel is 25 kilojoules per unit rather than 8, the coal tends to be chewed through quicker than the solid fuel, so this belt tends to fill up with solid fuel. So it sorts itself out. Okay, now, thanks JD. You gave me some hints about fluid dynamics and about using substations. I started having a play around with that. So leaving a gap between these arrays, we basically have another one running like that. Okay. Leaving that gap, I couldn't make the geometry for the solid fuel makers to work. Just couldn't find a way to pack in the solid fuel. Also, so I did look at running, basically putting in substations along like this. Right, they probably want to be back to back, don't they? Because then they connect in a grid. But then you have to leave a gap of 2 with your boilers, and I couldn't make anything tile nicely. These don't reach all the way through to the belt, so you put another one down there, and there's no connectivity between these two. So really what I wanted was a design that we could build around a nice square grid of substations. Let's make it 2x4 like an old-fashioned Lego brick. There we are. Okay, so if we take a boiler, right, there just isn't room to put many boilers. And then it occurred to me, there's a trick where you use the boilers from nuclear setups. Now, you can power those with steam from a normal boiler. They don't reach full power, but they do consume all the steam and turn all the steam into electricity. So they end up being very expensive versions of running 2 of these steam engines. Now, it looks like things will pack into 2 substations. So I went away and had a go at that, and shuffled some stuff around, and what we have is this. Right, so let's zoom in and see what's going on. So I have the belt running up the middle, and either side we have our normal boiler, and then behind it we have a single nuke turbine. We do that to the left and to the right, then we leave a single tile gap. That allows us to place a substation in amongst the belt. Because substations are 2x2, we can just skip over it. So we have 1, 2, 3 substations. That covers all but the last 4 turbines. Then we can put another one down here, which happens to fit, as if by magic, snugly into our backup coal line. So here we have the red coal line. It's got a split off. That should probably be a yellow there. Yeah. Then we use a priority splitter, which is prioritizing taking from the right and putting on the right. So that's going to tend to give you a straight through on the solid fuel. But when there isn't solid fuel, it's going to collect it from the coal. And then we can tile this because this is now exactly one substation tile apart. And the reason for this is we have an extra tile in our array for the belt and an extra tile separating these turbines. So that ends up being exactly the right geometry. So then the question is, how do we fit our solid fuel in? Okay, so we've lost nearly half of our width. So what we need is still to fit our 16 solid fuel makers. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, that's not great because we had a number of solid fuel makers which was a power of 2. 6 obviously has a 3 in it, which isn't wonderful. The compromise is to stick 6 plus 6 and then to make up the remaining 4 at the back. So I have 3 rows, but the last row is partial. Doing it this way, there's space for that substation. So we've got our nice rectangular grid of substations. Then these are outputting onto a belt that skips underneath. These are all producing solid fuel. Then we do a T-junction, skip under, and then that takes us in. So this is aligned, the center of this is aligned with our boilers. Then this overhangs one tile to the right, which just happens to match up with the one tile to the right here, and the offset to the right of the substation. And then this attaches to the pipe the other side. So this does tile. So we've got our full set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boilers here. So I think we need 8 for the full thing. Let's make it into 8. Okay, so we'll grab 2 of these, and this is where we see if it really tiles rather than it just tiling when you're watching, when you're not watching and I'm doing it in private. Right, let's see. So drop that there. The magic bots do their job. Off it goes. The other very slight change I've made, I've put burner inserters on the last 4 engines. That's enough to get everything bootstrapped. So if all the fuel runs out, the belts will carry stuff down there. Getting those last 4 booted up is enough power to jumpstart everything else. Okay, so these are starting to fill up. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boiler arrays. That fits nicely on this monitor. It's all nicely tiled. And let's quickly jump to map view. Okay, and it's really nice rectangular electric grid. Okay, so this is the entire array using the steam turbines. This is the equivalent array using the steam engines. And you can see this is quite substantially more compact and neater and tidier. Right, so the last thing I think I need to check is what this is like in terms of dimensions for roboports, because obviously I would like this thing to be able to construct itself once I've stamped down a blueprint, and for that you need roboports to work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just stick a roboport there, and if I go down, yeah, that covers it, doesn't it? So that's fine for width. Now what I need to do is check. I'm going blind here. Oh, they're up the top. There we are. Okay, so if we temporarily get rid of that. Okay, so that the only roboports working are the ones I have. Now we could put one here, for example, and so that doesn't quite reach, but we could put another one. I want to be a bit careful here because I don't want to run into placing them somewhere that they'd end up in the water. But these are a bit close. I think I can move these further away. Yeah, I can move them a lot further away. Okay. Well, I'll move them later. So what we could do is place a roboport to the side. And then one lining up with roughly the middle there. And then I could place this roughly at the middle as well. Okay. And then it's a question of whether we do roboports neatly or scruffy, but the proof of concept is there. So as long as we can bridge the roboports from side to side, we can give this full build coverage. And as soon as it's got full build coverage, we can stamp down the print. As long as any of these roboports exist or are within a build range of something else, this whole array will then build itself. So I think we have a winner. Thanks for watching. I'm aware that we're going over the same ground over and over, but these are how designs get refined one on the other, isn't it? And I'm fairly happy with this. We've got our two slightly backed up makers here. There's a temptation to lose those. And then we could actually move that over one and output directly into the underground and lose this belt. So let's run this for a minute and see if this solves the backing up problem. I'm just going to drain the fuel out. Okay. So all these are going now. We've got rid of some belt, which is always a good thing. And I think we've hit steady state. We're getting the occasional machine blinking orange. And the solid fuel is remaining very slightly backed up at that T-junction. But I think we're at steady state. Yeah, we're at steady state. So I'm calling this good. This is what I'm going to stamp down. So I'll probably end up with a couple of legacy boiler arrays just for the very early game, and then as soon as I've unlocked turbines, I'll stamp down this blueprint, and away I'll go. Thanks very much for watching. This, as I say, is the end of my How to Do Boilers series. I'm going to move on from this topic for the sake of everybody, and it'll be whatever I need next for getting my base working, or perhaps I'll even get to the point of playing through my blueprint base in a box. Thanks very much for listening. See you around soon.